I'm honored to have my next guest on. Chris Malar spent 20 years in the Navy flying many different types of planes. He also was in a plane crash, and we'll get to that later. We're going to go over his childhood, different things he done in the military. So if you like this content, please like and subscribe. We're going to be showing different pictures of his service, different planes he flew, different kind of stuff like that. So if you like it, please like and subscribe. Chris, I'm honored to have you on, man. I know we tried yesterday. We had some stuff go on. Well, we tried for a week now or something like that. But I've had some stuff go on. You've been pretty flexible with me, so I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, and it's an honor to be on the show, man. I mean, especially the guests that you've had on or having on, pretty impressive. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like I told you before, it's an honor to have you guys on. It doesn't matter what you done in the military. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is about helping other people with same problems me and you deal with day to day. So if your story touches somebody and they don't commit suicide or it just helps them have a better day, that's what it's all about, brother.
I agree, man. Or, abuse someone in their household because the anger sets in or depression sets in, suicide, especially, 22 a day, that sort of thing. And that's why I'm here. And I apologize to folks. I have a puppy and he's barking.
Yeah. So if you hear a big bark, it's my Doberman in the back.
Oh, that's right. And then of course I got my service dog, my Mal, and
yeah, everybody will understand. Kind of want to go over childhood, how you grew up, what kind of childhood it was, and where you grew up and what led you to join the Navy. All
right. Well, hey, I was born in Mississippi, in a town called Booneville, Mississippi. And my dog, it was too loud. I'll put him down. We can go back or whatever. So just let me know. And so Booneville, Mississippi in 1972, my father joined the Navy and we moved to San Diego, and he ended up being a corpsman. I wouldn't say that I was necessarily raised patriotic. My mom divorced him soon after, and she's going to marry a man who is going to start unfortunately, my journey down a dark road. And maybe that's what I held on to when I grew up. I mean, because I ended up growing up in California, in a town called La Verne, California, near Pomona. If most people know where that is, or may or may not. And he was Japanese. His name is Jim. I'm not going to say his last name. Yeah. And about age 6 to 16, beating started. And I'm not saying just getting slapped. I'm saying getting punched in the face. He kicked me, would hit me in the head with his knuckles. And I'm talking for things that were not exactly hit worthy, right? An example would be if I didn't put the towels just straight. He was OCD. One was like this. He'd call me in, and maybe he'd do it nicely, and you cut right at the door, and he just hits you right in the face, hard as you can, man. And you're knocked back into the wall. And so that was a life that I had to deal with. And then, especially as I started growing up, my mom would go out every Wednesday night. And I guess he hated that, so he would take it out on me. I'd have to vacuum, in the carpet. If they weren't perfect, he'd come in, headlock me, and hit me as hard as he could. I'd get bumps all over my head. I do remember one time. That's right.
Was this a day-to-day, every day kind of scenario?
Pretty much every day, but on Wednesdays it would be worse. It would, and I knew because my neighbor, I used to go over there crying all the time on Wednesday, and she never knew what was wrong. I would tell her. I think I did one time, and I told her I was scared of my stepdad, and she took me in, and she waited till my mom got home, who was drunk as usual. And my mom was just going through a phase. She's not a drunk, not alcoholic, but on those nights, my mom's a great mother. I think maybe at the time she didn't know, she needed money. She didn't know how to deal with Jim. If he was something mad, he would throw tables over and, what have you. Jim never served in the Japanese military, never served in war, never was he was an engineer by trade. And, he was just a man, quite evil. And, my sister, she says, well, he's so nice now. I said, well, so we're Nazi commander at the death camps, when they would get arrested, they're like, he was so nice. Yeah, because they don't have power anymore. When they don't have power, they got to protect themselves from, people getting involved and maybe doing something to them. And so that was, kind of my life. I was growing. And I remember one incident, 8 years old. And I was hanging out after practice with my friend, and his mom babysat us. And we were waiting. I was waiting for Jim. And he was like an hour late. And so we went back to the house. I don't think it's very good for an 8-year-old to be sitting there as it gets dark. So we went back, and he shows up in about 10 minutes at the house and seems nice. And I get in the car, and the beating starts, punching me, hitting me. He's punching me in the face. He's yelling Japanese. I have no idea what he's saying, but I can imagine. He used to call me stupid American, lazy, fat, Wow. And, I know. So around 10 is when you go through 8 to 10, 11, you go through, you're not growing out, you're going this way, so you're chubby. And then, of course, in high school, you're up. So, but he used to call me, that fat American. And then he, especially on Wednesdays, he wouldn't feed me to dinner because he say you're too fat. And I'm like, okay. So this day, when he picked us up, we drove home and we got into the house. And I tell you what, nothing ever reminded me of like SEER school, like this episode. And, when I went to SEER school, I was like, dudes hitting me, slapping me, whatever. And I'm like, oh, Dad. That's what it felt like. So he made me sit in my desk chair facing towards the door. It's dark in here, and there's a hallway light. And every 15 minutes, he'd come in and just slap me, hit me, punch me in the stomach. And I'd do that for 2 hours. And that trend kind of continued. I never looked to my mom because he would say, if you tell her, I'll kill you. And I believed him.
Oh, for sure.
He had a lot of power over me. He wasn't a big dude. He was like maybe 5'9", 140 pounds, just very intimidating, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but he's a grown man and you're a kid.
Yeah, exactly. When you do that to a child, you rob their innocence, whether you beat them, verbally assault them, sexually assault them, especially. It just takes away something that, just have a happy childhood. I get a lot of children don't. And I did ask him one time, the last time I talked to him, I said, why did you do all that? And he said, well, my dad did that to me. And I'm like, oh, so you took the easy way out. Sometimes it's not what you are, but what you aren't. I never hurt my child, my daughter. I mean, I spanked her on the butt when she was little, but that was it. And she's grown up to be a wonderful young lady. You don't need to beat people. Maybe it was his culture, but I don't care. You're in America. He used to say so many bad things. This country is so stupid. And I just want to say, oh yeah, who won the big one again? Well, it was us. Yeah. And maybe that's where my patriotism came from. He just badmouthed this country and everything about it. And I'm like, then why are you here? Why don't you leave? Sure. Go back to your awesome country, and that may have pushed my, me being patriotic, pushed that desire. And I will say, like my real father, my real father passed away last year. That he used to take me down when I was 2 to San Diego Lindbergh Airfield and the airport there, and because he said I wanted to watch the airplanes, and I did. And so since I was a child, for some reason, I had an urge to fly. And of course, Jim would always say, you're too stupid to make it. He'd tell me that, there's no way I was going to be a pilot in the military, So when I got accepted in the flight program, I remember going to him, his work, and like that accepted flight program, his look was like, didn't care. Like, whatever. F you.
That's your step, right?
Yeah. And so what I was trying to do really, part of it, of course, I always wanted to fly. And then in 82, I went with a friend to Point McGill Air Show, and I saw the Blue Angels fly and them talking about, carrier ops. They had this really good magazine. And I thought, man, I think I want to do that. I love the uniforms. They kind of look like ice cream men, but the whites and stuff. But it really solidified what I wanted to do. And so I started working hard in school. That shot was from Korea, actually. I was at a change of command ceremony. Oh,
is that pretty much the uniform you're talking about?
Yeah, so that's the standard summer whites. Yeah, no, and of course I had glasses on there that were, not authorized, but I like to wear the not authorized glasses. I can't stand Ray-Bans. When you start flight school, they give you all this stuff and they give you free Ray-Bans, and I'm like, who wants them? Nobody. In the trash. I just don't like Ray-Ban.
For sure.
Yeah. And I like the chokers too and all that. But so, my first 2 years in high school weren't so great because I really didn't do my research. We didn't have the internet. And then I found out I'm reading one day a book and it says you have to have good grades. And, I had like a 2.0 in high school. I thought, you got to have good grades. So I started working hard, applying myself. And You know, I ended up on the high school honor roll all last of my 2 years, so 4 semesters. And I decided I wanted to go ROTC, Naval ROTC. They had a program at UCLA, but my grades and my SAT score, go figure, weren't high enough to get in. So I went to Cal Poly, and they had a crosstown program. And that was, you could go to certain schools and attend NROTC. And that's what I did. I picked up a college program in first. The college program is just basically, hey, I want to join ROTC in hopes that maybe, you'll pick me up for scholarship, which happened. I ended up getting a 2-year scholarship, and then I finished out school and was commissioned April 1st, 1993.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Let me
I'm old.
For a second.
Okay.
So if your stepdad happens to watch this later on, what would you like to say to him now? Honestly, what comes to mind?
Don't ever meet me face to face. I'm 6 foot 225, blue belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, all this stuff, and I'm not going to put it. Look, nice or not, what you did was absolutely out there, and I have anger and hate towards that man. And some say, well, you got to forgive him. I'm like, why? Why do I have to forgive him? You don't do that to your child. My brother was able to go back to our grandparents. He said he couldn't take it, but my brother was older, and he just said, screw this. He called, and said, Jim is beating me. He started beating him too. Mm-hmm. And now our sister is with same mom, but that's her father. He beat her too, but not as bad. My fear was always this: what if I had a boy, a son? Would I have beat him? Because girls are just a bit different.
For sure.
I would hope that I would not have for the love of that child. My sister got slapped a lot in the face, and she never disciplined her children like that. There's discipline, but never like that, because children don't deserve that.
Yeah.
At least when you're under, they're just getting in trouble, right? And then there's just being excessive force for no reason.
You also got to remember, kids, they're going to do dumb stuff. They
are. Exactly. Kids do dumb stuff. And his whole thing was, okay, here's a time I spilt model paint in the garage. Like, I used to do models. Mm-hmm. And so I went to wipe it up. It was just smearing. It was all thick. It was, and I said, okay, I'll think when it dries, I'll scrape it off, but he had come home at some point, and he saw it, and he called me in, hey, Chris. And, I walked in, and he just hit me right in the face, and started screaming at me, and the paint seriously it was just drops. I covered about this much of an area, that much. And I'm trying to tell him.
Right off.
Huh? Yeah.
Something paint thinner took right off.
Yeah. And, and I'm like, I told him I was going to scrape it up, and, or here's an example. So I was able to volunteer when I was 16. I had my driver's license. There was we lived about 30 minutes from Chino Air Museum. They had World War II fighters all the way up to, Vietnam at the time. And even World War I think. And there was this program that you could volunteer, and you could help fix airplanes. And so it was an F-86, and I got to go in there and scrub and do all stuff. I had to ask him beforehand, so I did. He said, yeah, you can go. And then I get back, and he's furious. And because I got back, it was nighttime. So, well, not nighttime, but so I decided, hey, because it was like 9 to whatever. And I told him I'll do the yard on Sunday. So when I get back that night, he starts hitting me and screaming that I'm a lazy American. I don't do my job I'm not supposed to. But I'm like, you told me I could. And of course he didn't. That blew right past him. Just kept hitting me, Because apparently if you do it Sunday morning instead of Saturday morning, that's a huge deal, right? Because what happens if you don't do it Saturday? You do it Sunday? Nothing happens, And I'm certainly was going to do it because I didn't do it. And if I didn't have the line straight, man, I had to pull weeds. I had a weed whack. It had to be perfect, or I got a beating. So, yeah. And it all came to an end finally. I was 16, and I used to work at a yogurt shop, and they closed like at midnight, and it took about 2 hours to clean all this equipment, these big bins. And I remember doing that, and I got home, and he had washed clothes of mine, and I think it was a Saturday night. And I was so sleepy, I put him on the floor to put him on the morning. Well, he comes in the morning for some reason, because he get up like 6 and just start doing all this stuff. And, And he walked in my room. He had a very thick, like cardboard lid, they're like for documents and stuff, you know what I'm saying? So it's a cardboard lid. And he just starts screaming. And I sit up and he hits me as hard as he can right across the face, that corner thing. He hits me here. And then he fucking raises it and hits me on the back of my head. And screaming. And that was it. And so I went to my mom and she was in the bathroom. And I just basically cried. I said, you have never protected me. He has been abusing me for 10 years now. He has been beating me, bury your head in the sand. It's the first time I ever heard my mom scream like that. Although she wanted a divorce at the time anyway. She went downstairs and she gave him a what for, and he never touched me again. But so it was in a high school. I was still there trying to find a place to live. So I was there in kind of the fall quarter. Oh yeah, we had quarter, so it's 3. So okay, it says 2 semesters. And I was on the phone with a girl who I had a huge crush on, and I can hear him say, it's time for dinner. And I said, I'll be right down. Then he just screams like bloody murder. Like, if you don't come down now, what's going to happen? Okay. Nothing. Right. Yeah. So she goes, is everything okay? And I said, I'll call you later. So I hang up and I get on stairs. My sister comes and we're eating just nice. And he hits that table so hard, and shit goes everywhere. And he starts screaming at me when he called me. And I was starting to work out, and I stood up to him, threw my chair down, and he stood up, and my sister's screaming because he's kind of a panicker with everything. Mm-hmm. And my sister, and then he looks like he wants to hit me, and I dared him. I said, "Hit me, see what happens. Hit me. I want you to." I was ready to throw down. I think he knew it too because I could see his eyes, like, huh. And he sat down, and I moved out the next day.
It's probably for the better.
Yeah, it was for the better, but I don't forgive him. Yeah. I tell you, Jimmy, if you're listening, go fuck yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, Jimmy. Is that his name?
Well, his name was Mamaru. I'm not gonna say his last name, but I should, but he had an American name. He chose Jim.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So you graduate from ROTC? Is that where we were?
Yeah. So I graduate April 1st of 93. Commission, obviously, that day. I graduated from Cal Poly Pomona, and then in mid-March, but my commissioning ceremony was April 1st of 93. And I picked up flight school, and I was waiting to go down flight school. They stashed me at the old Top Gun in San Diego, the fighter weapons school. They had no back seats, and all we wanted, there were 3 of us there, all we wanted to do was get in the back seat of the TA-4. They were flying T-38s at the time, or F-5Fs. I'm not sure. I think it was F-5Fs then. And they had 2 Tomcats. All we wanted was a ride. Well, I'm the first one to get called up, and I head off to Pensacola. And the other 2 guys also open up, and they got like 20 rides each, kind of flying and fighting. So I'm like, of course, the way it goes. So I went down to Pensacola, and of course, at least for me, I certainly wanted jets, but if I didn't get jets, I wanted the E2C2, the big turboprops. And I ended up flying the C2. And at the time you're upset, you're like, didn't go my way. But, as I look back now, fantastic. It was my whole Navy career was fantastic. The C-2 Greyhound, by the way, I got winged. Now that's the T-45 Goshawk. So that was my last tour. And that was a flyby at the Naval Air Station Kingsville Air Show. And I think we're like at 450 knots there. So and it was a diamond formation. Yeah.
Are you in the red nose or the?
I'm in a red nose. That bird was for the 100th anniversary, and there was only one of those, and that was the Commodore's bird.
Gotcha.
So it's training wing 2 and number 200. I flew it many times, and all he did, he's a former Top Gun instructor and Hornet skipper, and he's only flew it as an aggressor because it looks different. It's a little bit easier to see for the students, and he bent that plane. You fly that plane, it was so bent. So it looked kind of cool, but it was not fun to fly.
Ground speed wise, how fast?
It's so 450 knots times 1.15 will give you at least, that's mile per hour. I'm not sure at the ground speed. Well, we're close to ground, so it's about that. We're like, I think we had to do it 1,000 feet, maybe 500. It's been a long time, but yeah.
Yeah.
So if you do, 1.15 times 450, that's the mile per hour.
Good God Almighty.
Yeah. Ground speed, of course, if our altitude is going to be different than, so we're probably about that on ground speed.
Yeah. That's crazy. Now, what's this right here?
So that's the E2 on top of the dome, E2 Hawkeye, and that's my detachment flying, and I'm flying in the C2, and that was for the end of a cruise flyby at the boat, and so we flew by, and it was a Navy photographer who took that photo, and that photo now resides in the USS Midway Museum. It resides, I think, at the Hall of Schools Command, Naval Air Station, Pensacola, because it's a great photo. I'm in the bottom one, the fat one.
Gotcha. Now, what's that thing on the first one? What is that called?
It's a radar. So I think its mission now is command and control of battle space. Yeah. It used to be airborne early warning, sort of thing. So to pick up fighters, but it's now assumed it's got more advanced avionics. I don't know much about it. It was certainly faster than our bird. That's for sure. Because we'd form out the boat to come in for the break, and they would just leave us behind. They had 5,000 shaft horsepower. We had 4,600 shaft horsepower. But it's actually, even that dome, it's way more aerodynamic than our plane.
Really?
Yeah. Now they all have 8-bladed props, and the C2 is going away, being replaced by the V-22 Osprey. And I think the squadron has already stood up down in San Diego. Yeah.
So the plane you're flying, is it like a cargo plane?
Yeah, it's a cargo, what we call logistics. We used to drop SEALs out, EOD guys out the back. It was always fun, not in a tactical environment, but more in a practice environment. The Navy didn't have that many. I think there were like 39 built and maybe, 35 left. Unfortunately, I was part of one that went away. They now have the V-22, and I think they're probably do more tactical stuff because they have MBGs. They have stuff set for special ops operations, and that thing, the CAGs, which is Commander of the Air Group. So you've got a Navy carrier, you have about 5,000 personnel. Half of them belong to the ship. Captain of the ship owns that. And then the Air Wing belongs to the CAG, Commander of the Air Group, who's also an 06, but they're on different career paths at that point.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That was an OEF, and I was not flying this one. I don't think my guys were, but it was a great photo and, a photo op. And so a Hornet joined up on a COD. I'm sure he was like, can we go faster? Yeah, so that's a very good picture that I put. But that was my detachment during right after 9/11. We were the first carrier, USS Carl Vinson, on scene after the attack.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to flip through some of these photos and let you.
Sure, man.
I don't want to forget any of them.
So that was my last flight in the Navy on Friday, and I retired on a Monday. I was trying to get 307, which had my name on it, but I was unable to get it. I did what's called a baby form, a 2-plane form. I was lead. We went out, did our stuff, came back down. We came in the break, and I broke. I had gas to do multiple touch and goes, but I couldn't, man. I couldn't even, so we make a call, to tower 180, or beam gear, full stop, right? It means we're a beam at the 180. We just call it in primary 180, but the beam, we have our gear down and we're stopping or touch and go. So I come around and I'm trying to say, beam gear stop, and I couldn't get out, because I started to get sad, and it took me a moment to get that out, so because I knew that was my last flight. Yeah.
Yeah. I could understand that. Here's another pretty cool ass picture.
Yeah, that's off my wings. I was lead, and I snapped that one. And it's a student. It looks like he's in position. I'm trying to tell, but yeah. So that was one of my students. I'm leaning back. We did 2-plane, 3-plane, 4-plane formations. 2 were pretty easy. When you get the 4-plane, there's airspace consider, and we'll do what's called a breakup rendezvous. You have 4 in echelon, break, 180 out, and they'll each roll about a mile. So we're in a MOA, military operating area, And I have to make sure as lead, you have to make sure that everyone stays within the MOA. You got other aircraft, you know, who are in MOAs right next to you. And it's kind of, and you have to keep all the aircraft in sight and grade them. And that was pretty difficult. So,
man, do y'all ever get in turbulent air and
how
do you keep from freaking hitting, man? That looks close as shit.
Yeah. When, you know, the Blues are the absolute masters of it. But yeah, it's funny because we come back down in the heat of summer. You have thermals are coming up, and that air, my helmet bouncing off the canopy, you know, and you know, and when you look at your wingman, you know, from this aviator, he's out there like bouncing, you know, and you're bouncing, and you're doing this, but from the ground it looks smooth.
Oh, it does when I see him, because I used to fly over the racetracks when I was working racing.
Yeah, and
it looks so damn close, man. It's like,
yeah, it's pretty close. I mean, not as close as the Blues, but you know, again, they're a breed above. Yeah, it was funny, and that's from that flight. So you can see the three aircraft. I'm in the far right one. The bottom aircraft right there. I was the last one to fly that to the carrier when I got carrier call in T-45, and I also did the JAG investigation. That one's going to crash like 3 months later. Both guys got out though. Yeah.
What caused the crash?
It was a 1v1. And so it was basically where, you know, here's the bad guy. The student will roll into him. He'll call Fox 2, and then he's going to break. So I think they started at like maybe 16. And he breaks down. So now they're trying to turn on the way down. And he could see the student with an instructor. I'm not going to mention their names, but kind of getting close to him. And at the bottom of the MOA or the field, it's 10,000 feet when we're out there, right? So that's the ground. And basically when the instructor got down there, he did an aggressive pull up to the vertical. And I'll explain that one too. The student went to his left side, so he's pulling up, but they're slowing and the student's closing. And the student crosses over to the right side and he says, I lost sight. The instructor takes it and says, you know, knock it off, you know, and then he would say, you know, I don't know, arrow 1, knock it off, arrow 2, and he'll come out arrow 2, knock it off. So when he said knock it off, they're pretty up high, nose up about 70. I'm got in the picture about 70, 80 degrees nose up. A little too much for T-45 at that stage. And the instructor basically, speedback pulls into him. And so Kip thought they were going to collide. T-45, you go within plus or minus 10 degrees of 90 up and you go to zero airspeed, it's going to flip into an inverted spin. And you won't recover. It takes like 350 foot-pounds of force to get the rudder over. Everything's hydraulic except the rudder. And so when he did that, went straight up, it went to inverted spin, minus 4 Gs. The student was built like me, big guy, because I'm 6 foot, 225, and he was about like my size. And they were floating, even with the harness lock, and their heads were up against, you know, because you have negative Gs. And he finally reached down with his fingertips, because Kip was, he was, call sign, he was a skinny guy, kind of small, you know. And the student got it, so they ejected upside down, you know, parachutes open. The jet continued on and impacted the ground as supersonic. Because normally, if your engine's good, when the seat goes, the flames, it pushes the throttle forward. So now the thing's just, you know, ends up, you know, gravity and speed help it, you know. When I saw the pictures of the crash scene, I mean, it's like a big crater, and there was like maybe a piece of metal the size of my phone. That was it. Yeah. Just millions of pieces. Yeah. And the one pic you just showed was the carrier. That was my last carrier landing in the C2. Yep, right there. Beautiful day off SoCal coast, and I'm flying the cod in, and you know, I know guys are like, you're lined up left. I'm like, it's maybe, but not that bad. The picture from the right side was you know, it's angled, you know. But aviators, we give each other shit. And you see the white water coming back, that means the ship is making all its own power. Right? So, sorry, it's been a while. It's making power to make its own wind. Okay. So it's going straight, but what that does, it causes like a rooster tail. So it's basically as the back of the carrier, you're going to get airflow that dips and it comes up. And as you roll out, it'll cause you have to plan for it. Right. You have to, you know, take the power off, get it back on and trap. So, but I would do day landings, good weather anytime. And when I was in Kingsville, that's all we did was, okay, no. Sorry. So that was my last T2 landing. And quiet. I have maybe I have over 600 landings. That's left and right seat. 10 in T2, and I think like 18 in the T-45.
Mm.
Yeah.
Man. Let's see. I'm trying to remember which ones. That's I already did that one. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the diamond. It's okay. So when I was AOIC assistant officer in charge, that was me, Lieutenant John C. Malar Bunky is my call sign. You can hear how I got that if you want. It's because most call signs aren't cool. If you come in, you're like, I'm Maverick. I'm like, no, you're dickhead. So when I was in my last squadron training, VT4, the Mighty Warbucks down in Pensacola, flying T2 Buckeyes, I just got married, and she used to call me Honey Bunny. Then it morphed into Hunky Bunky. So we were at a party, all of us there. It's all the squadron members, and she blurts out, "Chris' call sign is Hunky Bunky," because I was talking about it in the room, and everyone freezes and they turn like, "You're Bunky." I'm like, and it stuck. 18 years, man. I had commanding officers, even chief of staff, and the admiral, right? Didn't know my name. Everyone knew my Bunky. I was at 04 in a department head meeting, and actually it was in 03, but I was sitting in because I was SDO. That's why, in a department head meeting, and I was a public affairs officer, so a media outlet had called, and the CO took the call and said, "This is Commander, whatever," and it says, "Oh, that would be Lieutenant Commander or Lieutenant." He paused and just like, "Bunky," he doesn't know my name, poor leadership. So I had gone. This is during tsunami relief stuff off coast of Indonesia, and the admiral, and so we had to give a brief. So I, of course, had to give a brief to the admiral, and this admiral, he was tough. He was a tough dude. He didn't take any, he sat in that war room and sat up there, 1 star, like, I am a god, and that's what it was like, and so the chief of staff who serves for him and says, "Hey, all right, sir, we got Lieutenant Commander," and the admiral goes, "Bunky," and it's like, yeah, no one knew my name. Bunky was,
Water choked me up. Sorry about that.
That's all right, man. I got my water too. So my focus dry. I'm just waiting.
Yes, it's crazy how just talking get your throat dry.
It does, man.
How long were you in Korea?
I'm sorry about that. I was in Korea for a year. So 365 days, July 31st, 09, July 31st of 10.
How'd you like it?
I loved it. So the thing about Busan, Korea is that it's about the size of Chicago, 4.5 million people. And I don't know, we maybe had a total of Navy guys. Our unit we had like 5 enlisted, 2 officers. Then we had like 8 South Korean. Now that's the active, and then the reserves would come in. I would say naval officers in Korea were like 15. Some were at the base. I mean, the city's so big. I had heard that there's maybe 100 military guys, and so the good thing about that was, there's curfews.
Mm-hmm.
I followed them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so I go drinking all, and there's no SP. That there's nothing. Nobody's going to harass you. Right, not like maybe Seoul or especially Osan.
Yeah,
it was really good, and the food was great. The people were nice, and I enjoyed it, and I loved. These mom and pop stores, and I'm sure if you've been to Korea, there are a lot of people who've been to Korea, and if they had like a sign, a cartoon, it had a pig on it,
mm-hmm.
That means they serve pork. And all the vegetables and stuff, or just had a cat, and it was just fantastic. Food like $4 American dollars, man. You have a big dinner, but it was low in calories. You had these thin meats and all these vegetables, and
it was bulgogi meat, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of hard when you come out here. There are some Korean restaurants, and you eat the food, you're like, well, that's not real Korean. That's not what Korean food is at all, but it's American.
Even the kimchi is not right.
Yeah, it's not. And I love kimchi. I absolutely love it. Of course, it's not always pickled cabbage. We pickle whatever. And so one day I got the smart idea. I rented a brand new apartment, and these were in sky rises. And these were like for Koreans, families who made it. And Koreans love their cars. So they have like they had I forget the name of the company, but they don't sell it in the U.S. These things are like 450, 500 turbo motors, right? V6s, and and if you had a nice car, it's your status, and you live in these buildings, so you get a lot of these, professional types, and they were nice, man, very nice. And so that part I love too, just being out there but so I went to the store and I bought this bag of kimchi. And the one thing out in Korea is when you look for apartments, they don't clean it up until you say you want it. So I went to like used apartments and it smelled like just dead fish. And one had blood because I guess they had cut the fish and left the blood all over. And I'm like, I said, we need to do something brand new,
Yeah.
And so I get this apartment. So I buy this bag and I open it and I take some to lunch. And it's like a Ziploc. When I come home, my apartment smells like kimchi and death. It rotted the whole. I had to throw it out. And it took me like a week to get that smell out.
It's
that
terrible.
Was close, man. Yeah. So, but yeah.
So for the listeners,
yeah,
I try to explain how freaking cold it is in Korea. People don't get it. How cold was it to you?
So Busan obviously was less cold than Seoul, and I had to do once a month go up to Seoul on the bullet train, and do stuff. Dude, in the wintertime, it was brutal. It was not good. You can imagine the Marines fighting at Chosun, and that's up north. That's further up north, and they had one of the coldest winters ever in 1950. In December when they were fighting Chosun. It hurts. I'd rather fight in heat, man.
Yeah.
No way.
So I was at Camp Hovey, it's not far from the North Korean border. I don't know how far it is. I ain't gonna say.
Yeah, it's pretty close though. I mean, when you think about close enough.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't take much to get to us, you know what I mean? But
no, it wouldn't. Yeah.
When I tell you, I spent 2 years there, and it was the coldest I've ever been in my life, but I loved it. It's one of the things you don't know how good you had it till it's gone. You know what I mean? Kind of thing.
Right. Yep. I mean, it was just lovely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was young, I wouldn't say I was sheltered, but my parents were pretty strict on me. So I grew up in Alabama, so it was an eye-opening adventure for me once I finally got out amongst the town, if you know what I'm saying, the bar scene. And I've always loved Asian women from the get-go. So it was
perfect place.
Grown man's playground. You know what I mean? It was like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is I used to go to the expat bars. I was married at the time, but I'm not into Asian women, but you could talk to girls. If the Asians were at the expat bars, they weren't there for the Asian dudes. They were there for the Americans or the, English, Canadians, and Australians, what I saw. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those were teachers because they had like 50,000 teachers in Busan.
Yeah, I try to tell people there's Australian women. There's, so many different women.
South African too.
Yeah. I went to a bar in Seoul, and I don't remember the name. It was a bunch of buddies of mine. Sarn Herrick, if he watches, Matt Herrick. We pulled a lot of Australian women out of this bar, and beautiful women, man. And it was like, why are these Australians here? And come to find out, they were all teachers.
Teachers.
Yeah, some lovely, lovely times.
Oh, I'm sure, man. I've been to Australia too, Perth and Sydney. Fantastic times, man. Those visits, I don't remember everything.
Imagine.
I remember some. I was drinking a lot. I don't drink so much now, but I thought Australia and Korea. Of course, I was in Korea for a year. I was in Bahrain for 6 months. I was in which sucked, and then I was in Singapore for almost 6 months, that's a cool place, actually, Singapore as well.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So
Philippines, you've been there?
Yes. Well, just briefly, we went there, stayed overnight, and so not really got to see around. I've been to Thailand, spent a week in Thailand. I think it was Phuket, and then
Phuket.
Yeah, and then Indonesia. There, of course, I was doing this tsunami relief a lot too there, and then. What was the other one? Thailand, Malaysia. I don't know. It'll come to me. But yeah, being that all four of my cruises were Westpac.
Gotcha.
So always from Asia to the Persian Gulf and then out.
Yeah. So you had the Asian region.
Yeah. I tell you what, summertime, the Persian Gulf on the flight deck. So it gets up with jets turning 145 degrees, right? Well, then you get inside the aircraft. They want you to man the aircraft, but they're not ready to start possibly man the aircraft. So you get in there, and we could start the APU with permission. Okay, we got the APU. It didn't work. It would be, we had a thermometer one time, and it was like 158 degrees in the cockpit. Yeah. It's so hot, and I mean, you're just pouring sweat. I got my helmet off, and you're just dying. So let's say, if we're going to fight wars, why can't we fight it like, I don't want a war, but, climate like New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's always hot or cold.
Yeah, there's no in between.
No in between, man. Yeah.
Like I tell people in Iraq, Kuwait was actually hotter than Iraq, but Iraq, my God, it was so hot, man. Oof.
I hear that. I never went to Iraq. I spent my time in Afghanistan, but I've been in Kuwait, man. And we flew from Fujairah in UAE to Kuwait many times, and it was amazing how the temp just skyrocketed. The time you got to Kuwait, we leave Fujairah, it's 100 degrees. Got to Kuwait, it's like 118. I mean, it was just brutal. Yeah.
Did you ever fly into Ali Al Salim?
Is that in Kingdom?
No, it's in Kuwait.
I flew. Okay, we flew into the base that was right off the water. So if you came, south towards it, like you're in the Persian Gulf, kind of north or northeast, it was right on the water. So I forget the name of that base, but I did fly to one of their Air Force bases as well, in terms of they had fighters and stuff, just to drop stuff off and come back. But we would park our C2s, the CODs, in that base that's off the water. I forget the name.
I can't remember because there wasn't no windows. I was in a C5 or whatever it was.
Oh yeah,
big ass plane, man. But
I know, huge, right? And I don't even know if the C-17 has windows. I don't know.
It was one of them. I'm not good with naming planes, but it was literally cargo. I mean, my damn legs were so asleep, it was ridiculous.
But, yeah, I bet, man. Cargo planes in the military are not fun. They're uncomfortable.
They're terrible.
Yeah.
And we had to wear our helmet, our everything. It was miserable. But,
I was going to say about that is when I was in Korea and we were operating like February, March out of Osan, and it was just cold, and we'd launch, and so the aircraft carrier would be off the east side. That's like the Japanese call it Sea of Japan, which the Koreans do not call it that, right? They call it like the EC or something.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd have to put poopy suits on. So he had all your gear. Then you got this big, orange suit, all zipped up in. It would get so hot in that damn thing. You take it off and you get back, because we had well, we'd launch, it'd be right in the clouds, 500 feet. You'd be in the goo all the way up for 500 nautical miles, and you'd break out like 400 feet to the carrier, and you take it off. It's just sweat, man, would come pouring out. Your flight suit is, yeah, that wasn't fun.
So what's the like when you're doing that straight up climb? What's the G's like on your body?
Performance jet. So the T-45 is the Navy's advanced and intermediate jet trainer. It does not have anywhere the performance of an F-18, a Viper, F-15. I mean, I think they call it like a Category 3 aircraft. I think that's what it was. And it could turn. It had no thrust. But it was easy to get up to speed because it was very aerodynamic. And if you look at one up close, it's smooth, all the rivets, right till you get back to where the boards were, the speed brakes that would come out. Then you saw rivets, because aerodynamically it didn't matter once it was past that, because it costs more money to make it smooth. And so now they're that there. We'll save money, because the Navy's always about saving money. All the forces are. I'm not sure if they are, but at least for the aircraft.
I know who ain't saving money.
Yeah, that's right. Nobody saves money. The Pentagon's always like $1 billion over of stuff not accounted for, and so let's say I'm flying, the T-45, and most instructors in Kingsville, 90% were Hornet, Tomcat. We had a few Tomcat guys and Harrier guys, and then you had a small 10% ETC2, Prowlers, and S3s. The S3s are gone now. Prowlers are gone now as well, and so it depended. If you're doing a basic loop, it's the same for Cessna, for jet. It's right. The 4Gs, then we would fly, angle attack and back to 4Gs and roll out. But let's say I want to performance climb, is yank it up. I mean, you could Below 5,000 feet, you had to be I think it was 6.5 Gs you're limited to. And so if you yanked up, you could sustain that for a while. So it'd be 6.5 Gs. The aircraft could do 7.33. Been there, but it's instantaneous, you know. And you snap and you know. I said we used to do something called tail chase. So you'd be in the lead, you'd break 180, you give him the signal. I think it was like a cock gun signal. I think it's been a long time. So you come, and now what you're doing is you're chasing this guy through all sorts of maneuvers. And it's not like the BCM that was very scripted, you know, at least the ones that I did. This was do what you want. And you know, think of it like a cone. You're trying to stay 1,000 feet back within this cone, within this area, right? You're not trying to engage, getting close, you know, put the pipper on his nose. You're not trying to do that. And so we sometimes, that's when, especially if a student was flying, they would rack that jet, man. I mean, and you'd be looking this way and you're looking outside and that goes right and snap it over in your head. That's why a lot of fighter pilots, they have problems with their neck. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And so we would normally pull 6 to 7 plus Gs in those flights. Instantaneous 7, we'd sustain. Like I would be a bad guy and I would just do this basic, you know, I'm turning and, you know, not being a fighter pilot, my arm would get tired. And I mean, we'd sustain like 6 Gs in that turn as I'm coming down. I'm just sustaining, you know, the aircraft would go to buffet and you're kind of letting off and all that. And those guys are used to it. My arm felt like 1,000 pounds, man. You know, they're like, so monkey, you're a big guy. Stop being a wimp. No.
So somebody that, say you're on the ground or whatever, what could you go through being a civilian to get that kind of G's, to feel that kind of thing?
I think they have, like, obviously if you could afford to ride in one of the Confederate Air Force F4s or something, I'm not sure how dynamically they, you know, maneuver that jet. But there were like, I think there were L-39s, Dolphins or something, and they're straight wing jets. And I flew the straight wing T2 Buckeye. And probably can't pull enough G's and go as fast, but they can pull, man. And so you could go up in one. I think you can even dogfight someone else and all that. I think. I know they have the props that do it, but yeah, you can experience. I have no idea how much it costs, but you can go in there. And funny story, I was doing a cross country from Kingsville to San Diego, and we would always stop. I'd go to Midland, Texas, because they were really good to us, and then I'd go to it's an old Air Force base. It's where Allegiant is stationed. I'm not sure what it's called, William Tell or William. I don't know. I call it now. But they have an FBO that caters to the military. There's a restaurant, and you would land, and they had a park next to it, and these people would come and take pictures of you. They'd be out there all the time. And what was weird, I would get pictures of me landing. They would send it to my email. I didn't ever met. I mean, how they get my name? You know, I don't know what they're doing. I get these pictures. Even in Japan, I had that. I'm on the boat, and I'm checking. I get all these pictures of my C2. We're landing. I'm like, well, you know, these guys are good. Yeah. Well, sometimes people want to say, hey, I'm cool too. So I go in, like it's a short stop, get fuel and go. I want to get to San Diego and party. And I go in the restroom and I'm peeing. And this guy follows me in, and he's no kidding, almost touching me, standing over my right shoulder. And I'm like, sir, can I help you? And he's like, I fly jets too. And I'm like, oh, well, good for you. He's like, yeah, I own an L-39. I'm like, okay. Yeah, can you step back a little bit? Imagine if I had to take a dump. He'd be standing outside the stall, scratching the door.
Be a two-seater then.
Yeah. I mean, people do this stuff. It was funny because I had his parents come up, and a little beautiful girl, remind my daughter, and she a little princess dress, and I'm telling her, and I'd get pictures with kids and everyone, and I'm like, okay,
yeah.
Nobody knows who I am, which is fine with me, but they, like what we talked about earlier, a lot of people are very patriotic, and they love the fact that jet pilots from Navy, Marine Corps. Because almost always I saw Harriers there from Yuma. They'd come and, refuel and then going out. I've landed for, there were Hornets, Vipers, Eagles, T-45s, T-38s. So it was very popular to go to.
Yeah. I've always been fascinated by all the jets and stuff, because when we flew private, We don't fly into big airports. It's all private stuff. And
no, you didn't. Yeah, because I was a corporate with NetJets. Yeah, you fly in small.
Yeah, like Oklahoma was one of our big ones. Somewhere in Amarillo, Texas, and like you said, there'd be like a barbecue shack. You can go hurry up and order real quick and go back. And while they're fueling the plane, get back on the plane, be eating your. Yeah. So yeah, it was really cool. And you said you flew a King Air.
I flew King Air. So when I started flying the King Air, that was after the Navy. I took a job as with L3 C-3 ISR doing ISR missions in Afghanistan. So I was a contractor. So those are more MC-12s. We flew white ones. I flew U.S. Air Force marked ones. And what was funny about that is that we had a few guys who were ex-special forces, and what's the guy? They'll drop them in a JTAC maybe, and go.
I'm not really sure.
So anyways, they wore purple berets in the Air Force. So anyways, it was funny because as pilots, we're all gun freaks. We're like, dude, and they knew about guns. They knew how to shoot, and we'd ask them questions. But then they now that they're out, wanted to fly airplanes. And so they'd ask us how do you get your license? How do you do this? And it was just funny that, we do this in the military, and then we're crossing, and we want to do what the other does. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, I flew a King Air from Statesville, North Carolina to somewhere in Iowa to the racetrack in Iowa. And I'm not shitting you when I tell you this, and you can back me up. Okay. I don't know how it is where you were, but this guy we're looking for this plane to get on. They're like, be here at this such time. This dude, he looked like a kid, flew this damn little plane in. Hey guys, come here, give me your luggage. Puts it up in there. He's like, I need some of this sick co-pilot. We're all like, I don't have no damn license. He's like, no, someone's just got to sit up here. Yeah. There's a seat on the shitter that somebody sits on. I don't know how about your plane, but that's how it was on this one. I mean,
well, not in the MC-12. You had a bunch of secret top secret gear all over the plane. It was full. But I flew a short while with wheels up, and it was all luxury, and they had you could sit on the crapper.
Yeah. It was and how to shade the window, you rolled it.
Yep.
And what's crazy, I remember looking out, and there's fighter jets around Air Force One going past us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was freaking cool. And I got a picture, but you can't really make it out. Yeah, I know what it is. But man, we get near Iowa, and all you see on the radar, because you can see straight, there's no door from the pilot to us. And we're all NASCAR, so nobody's going to hijack a damn plane. We just want to get there, do our job, get paid, get out.
Yeah.
So the dude looks at us, and he's like, we got 45 minutes worth of fuel, and it's whatever to get through the storm. But should I fly around and go through it? And I'm like, why the fuck are you asking us? You know what I mean? Just get us. I mean, this plane's rocking. And
the only thing I could say that is maybe he, as a aircraft commander or captain, you can take the opinions of people on your aircraft. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying, but they ask. I mean, that if you have 45 minutes left of fuel, you land, right? Because you can get somewhere and the weather's bad there, and now you got a hold or whatever. Now you get on the ground, get fuel, and then launch again. It is what it is,
I just saw something really weird with my screen. It's like half of me's moving, half of it ain't. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Like
I'm trying to stare at you instead of like, at the camera, but no, it looked normal to me. But again, oh yeah, now I see it. Look at your
weird.
Your left side is locked. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I clicked on this damn picture. I don't know how to not do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When I flew for NetJets, I flew something called the Citation 680 or the Sovereign, and I absolutely love that jet, man. And the thing is like, the bathroom in the back of the Sovereign was nicer than my bathroom.
Just trying to fix this. Yeah. Whatever. It's It's
being stupid. And the window shades weren't shades, but you just hit it and the window would darken. That was fantastic. And it had a great APU. It was such a wonderful aircraft, man. But that's when I was diagnosed towards the end. And I unfortunately had this long. Yeah.
So I got a couple questions to ask you. Biggest life regret. If you have one, you might not have one.
I do. It's not being able to have another child. The promise about my life is the birth of my daughter. And we wanted her to have because I had 2 siblings. My ex-wife had 2 siblings. We wanted her to have that. And we tried, just couldn't. That's regret. I mean, I don't really have control over that. I get it, But as far as right now, no. I mean, I would do my Navy career over again.
Yeah.
I would do it the way I did it, man. Yeah.
Biggest life lesson.
You know what? One thing about the military and what it did for me, it had a beat down to me. I was a shy introvert kid. I used to hang like 6th or 8th grade. I would hang around back of the schoolhouse by myself. I was afraid of everything. And there were times when guys would, I had a few friends and they would raise their hand and I'm doing this and like, what's wrong with you? I still do it today sometimes. I'm with someone and it's it because I was used to getting hit every fucking day for 10 years, He went on vacation one time back to Japan 2 weeks and it was the greatest time of my life there. So the military builds it. They take you and they start flying. You build this confidence, You just build this crazy confidence. And flying off aircraft carriers made me more confident, And I'm not saying I was great at it. I was a very average pilot. But I will say this: when we talk about my PTSD and stuff, and learning to deal with that, and learning how to cope and all that is that. It's the lesson I've learned, and I waited so long. My ex-wife used to say, "You need to seek help." So there's the mishap. Well, there was Jim, the mishap in Afghanistan, and I had some near misses, right? And we'll talk about it later, I suppose. But
yeah,
I think the lesson was don't think of it as like I used to think, well, I'm a warrior. I'm not a pussy. I'm not going to do that. It's the wrong answer, man. And so it is just seeking help. And that's what I've learned to that. I mean, that's the life lesson. If you want a harder life, then don't seek help, right? But if you want to ease that pain, seek help.
Yeah. Let me see if I can. It is so weird to me. It's driving me.
I see it. So there's a split as you see it down your left side, and your head will actually disappear.
Yeah, there.
Yeah, it's a split screen but I don't know why, because it's got all your stuff look normal, but just you.
Dude, it's so weird to me. I saw it, and I'm like, what is going on here?
I wish I could help, but I'm very computer illiterate.
I'm pretty good, but this one's pissing me off. I can't.
I'm sure you are because of what you do now.
Yeah.
If I put on my phone, I have to go to my daughter, and she was like, "Didn't you fly multiple planes off carriers?" Yeah, but it was back then.
Yeah.
So, you're here.
Can you still hear me?
Yep, gotcha. It's still doing it? Still doing it.
Yeah, it's still doing it. No, I said you spent some time in Afghanistan. Was there like a fob you were on, or was it?
Well, no, I was on Bagram. I was at Bagram.
Okay.
And so, this is kind of my first junction as the COD pilot. That is an asset, that belongs to the carrier. So if guys are going in and, drop bombs, all we're doing is we're the tail of the dragon. We're taking cargo. We landed in Pakistan at Jacobabad a few times. And I kind of have a funny story about that. So we were going to pick up the old Senator John Warner, right, and his staff. So we fly out and we land. And remember, this is right after 9/11, about 20 days or 30 days or so, whatever it was. There's no perimeter fence around the airfield, right? So they've been attacked a few times. And so they had gunners out there. So we land. And we pull up, we get out because they say shut down there. I mean, we're away from the base, the chow hall, all that stuff. And they'll come to you. I'm like, okay. And we're right next to a security emplacement. And this drone lands. It's the old, with the prop And those were a lot that we used as shooters when I was in Afghanistan later. And it comes up and it stops, and its eye turns and looks at us, and we're like, flipping it off and stuff, being stupid. Kind of thing, guys. And well, so his staff comes out, and a lot of prop aircraft like C2 have de-ice boots, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the back tail, it all just come off. And so they get there, and my air crew notices it. And so they're standing back there like a group of 12. And my air crew has ripped it off, and now they're putting duct tape. And the tail's all duct tape. Everything is kind of, like the boots get on, and this is duct tape. And they keep looking up, and they're pointing, and then they keep looking at me because I'm air commander. So they're looking up. And so finally his staff, his chief of staff comes up, and he's like, hey, the senator wants to know if that's safe. And I'm like, yeah, safe. I had no idea. But it's safe. It's good. No problems there. And it was just funny because, I've seen some pictures lately of like airline jets and stuff with speed tape all over them, just so you know that duct tape holds up at over 400 miles an hour, just FYI. So
really,
it did. I mean, because we went feet wet, and they're like, the ship said Buster, which means hurry up. So we were dropping the nose, and you have a speed limitation, E2C2, 343 knots. I think it has to do with the canopy. Anyways, I'm just going, and we're talking. I look down, and I'm like 380 knots, well over 400 miles an hour. I had blown through that, I think it's true airspeed, at least the indicated part, with the true, it was over, So I told them when I landed, hey, I think, inspect things if you have to. But it was just, it was just so funny to fly around with that duct tape, a normal day in the life of a C2 pilot, believe me.
So what year did you have your, you had a plane crash?
Yeah, it was March 12, 2003. I was instructor pilot with VDA 120. I had a student in the left seat. He was very, very good. He ended up becoming a commanding officer. I've heard nothing but good things. He was good back then. And then in the back, I had a aircrew instructor with 4 aircrew students, right? So we went down to the Marine Corps Air Station Chairpoint, and we're practicing touch and goes. And what we would do once I was satisfied with his ability to, come down, fly the ball. And, I'm not sure if they had a ball. I think they did, and it's to simulate a carrier landing. That's what you're doing, Boom. And so you start to simulate single engines. And what you would say is like, simulate, always start that, don't go right engines fail, because, simulate right engine fail. And you put the idle, and then he'll go through the procedures, power gear, max rudder, fuel dump, just something like that. So he does it, doesn't do a great job. The aircraft's and I said, okay, we have it back, and as you rotate, he's adding the power, and so we come up again. So this time I said, I'm going to fail the left engine. So I simulate it, and then I put it at 500 foot-pounds of torque. So that simulates what's called a feather, right? So the blade's turning, and it's probably going to look more like this, and then when it feathers, it turns into the air like this. So if you secure the engine, this is going to get you to come down real quick. This will, on my hand here, okay, like this is more aerodynamic, right? So you can stay airborne.
Yeah.
So I did that, and he touched down about 10 feet right of center line. And I said, you have him back, work it back over to center line. And he jams the power on, and I have my hands like right there. They're ready to go, right in the controls. And the aircraft starts to veer. When he jammed the power on, it starts to, here comes the prop. And what he did was he started kicking the rudder, right? The rudder controls the nose of the aircraft, left, right. Okay. So he's kicking the rudder left, and he starts to veer off the center line to the left. And I thought, one more second, I'm going to grab it, and then all hell broke loose. And so what he had done is he had cross control, and I had an asymmetric wing stall. So the correct answer is to go rudder, maybe with some aileron, right? Instead, he had full left rudder in, and he went full right aileron. He just panicked. And the thing about a good student is you get complacent, and they will kill you just as fast as a bad student, right? The reason we don't crash as bad students for the most part is because we are watching these guys. They're low performers. I'm watching them. So the high performers, you go, okay. But it wasn't like I was like my hands in the lap. I heard a pilot's particular one who would turn sideways during and talk to guys. I mean, just idiotic stuff. Here I am, all prepped, ready to go. And when it went, first thing I did, because we had rotated, and I I got it. I set the plane down on the ground because we were going to flip. And when I set it down, it was too late. It went 160 degrees off heading, slid into the dirt. The total mishap from when it happened to it came to stop was 3.7 seconds. And, you know, it's the human factor, like they talk about in Sully's book or, you know, in the movie. It takes you a second to see what's going on. I mean, there's a fraction. The total thing is just under 4 seconds, right? And I maybe delayed, you know, when it started happening, like, what the fuck? And I just grabbed it. A second went by. Second too late. The aircraft skids to a stop. The prop, okay, so the right gear collapses. Fuel on hot engine, it goes up. The right wing hits the ground, breaks in half. The prop hits the ground, and it rips through the fuselage. And then the horizontal tail in the back, it broke in half, right? So we're at a stop, awful noise, and I said, evacuate, and I pulled the T-handles and the fire buttons, and I looked at my, you know, now he's a winged aviator, but he's just new to the C-2. I said, get out the back. And the aircraft's leaning, and it's kind of leaning down this way. I couldn't see what's going on, so he goes out, and I said, I'll go out the distance. I open it, and 2 huge sheets of flame come in. And it was like, I mean, just, I can see it today, just boom, boom. It was like sticking your head into a, you know, an oven at 800 degrees. It was brutal. So I slammed it shut, and I said, okay, how do I know the left side's on fire? So I'll go out the back. And so the back is just, it's just acrid smoke everywhere. And I hear what sounds like gunfire, like almost AK fire. No, it's the fire. You know, and I could see the emergency door in the back has been open. There's a like a small door that opens upwards with emergency pressure. I climb up. The tail's about 10 feet up, and the grass now, by the time I'm out, is completely on fire. Fire everywhere. And so I jump down the fire, and I run out, and I count my guys, make sure okay. And there's 6 of them. They're fine. I turn around as I'm walking back, the flames are like 150 feet high, right side of the wing, fuselage. It was huge. And then right at that point, the trucks pull up and they start blasting it with foam. They later told us that we had about 20 seconds because it was about that far from the fuel tanks from exploding. You know.
Damn.
Got out. And I blew out my L5 S1 disc. I didn't feel it for like 2 hours because the adrenaline's going, you know.
Yeah.
And the first thing you do is you go to physical, make sure you got no drugs in your system, you know, et cetera, which I didn't. And then the Navy sends a mishap board right away, you know, and they start questioning you and all that. And they're going to gather the data, and then you're going to sit what's called a FNAB, a Field Naval Aviator Evaluation Board. There are 5 results of that. The ones you want, no matter what, are the alphas. Use 3 and alpha. Alpha 1 is not your fault, pure mechanical. Go back to flying. The A2, I think, is what it was. It's this aircraft's not quite for you, and you need to go fly something else. So we would sometimes get Hornet guys who were good at the boat, right? But maybe weren't so good at BFM, drop bombs. They say, you know what? Maybe the best thing is to go fly E2C2s, you know, because you're good at the boat. If you couldn't fly at the boat, you're not going to go E2C2. You're going to go P3s or helicopters, right? And then A4 is pod air, but it's like shit happens. You have to, train. And like when I did the 1v1, I mean, it's an environment and there were mistakes made, you know, but sometimes there's going to be things like that. And actually the admirals were like, we are simulating, failed engines, been doing it for years, and I'm not the first one who's gone down, So, of course, 6 months before that, I'm at Choctaw Airfield in Pensacola, and I rotate in 100 feet. I hear like 3 big blasts, and what they are, it's a compressor stall. And I'm looking outside, and he goes, "Sir, I think we lost an engine." And I'm like looking over, and everything's lighting up, and the aircraft's are slowing. I took controls, and I said, "I got this. I have controls." And I got up to 300 feet, and we had a climb speed of 115. The civilians do this funky thing. You have to figure out speeds. I'm like, just the Navy had one climb out, right? Worst case scenario, if you can climb out at this with your engine out, blah, 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 and all, you can climb out anywhere. They make it simple. The civilians make it hard. I don't know why. whatever. So I can't get. I'm 105. I get the wing down 5 degrees, and it's a good engine, and the ball centered, and it's just not going. So I dropped down, and I already told Paddles, Paddles, 21 lost its port engine. That's Navy talk for the left. Right?
Yeah.
For all those Army and Marines out there. Marines might know what that is. Air Force. And he said 99, Hawkeye Greyhounds, hold dirty, I think is what he said, or clean maybe. And so basically it means you can hold at certain altitudes, above the airfield, and you're going to clean up. So it's more aerodynamic. And I got down to 150 feet AGL above the ground. The trees were 50 feet. So I'm 100 feet above the trees. And I told the student, I said, dump fuel. And so the moment we start dumping fuel, I dumped 2,000 pounds of JP5 all over the southern panhandle. But the moment he turns it on, the Paddles, which is an LSO, which I was also, landing signals officer, he says, hey, Bunk, your left engine's on fire. And I'm like, oh, shit. Well, it wasn't on fire. The fuel dump is back there. And so it looked like from their angle, it was smoke coming out, but it was fuel. It went right to 115, and I climbed right up there. We turned left, and I said, hey, man, it's all in control. You want to land it? And he's like, okay, I'll land it. And I'm like, okay. I was riding the controls, sorry. But, and so everything was fine. So it was something
when you do a fuel dump, does that shit evaporate in the air or?
Not that low. It's on the trees and the ground at that point. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Now, when you're up high, it's going to evaporate before it ever hits the water.
Gotcha.
We had one time, not us, but when we were flying S3s, and S3 had an emergency one day. And the thing about Naval Base Coronado, there were a lot of people, retired Navy, especially admirals, who complained about the noise. And my thing is, if you move onto an island as an airfield that's been there since 1932 or even before that, there's going to be noise. It was there first. And to move next to an airfield and complain about noise is absolutely absurd, We used to get that Miramar too, because we would bounce on the left runway, and I get back in the wing duty officers out there, and he just looks dejected, and like 68 calls in 2 hours about complaining about the noise. I'm like, didn't you move next to an airfield that's been here for a long, long time? It's different if you move somewhere and they build an airfield,
Sure.
That's just standard. Well, anyways, this S3 has emergency, it dumps fuel. And then like the next day or two, there's an article in the paper that says Navy's dumping fuel all into the water to land. Nothing about the emergency. I think they lost an engine. Of course, trying to make us look bad, like, hey. So we deal with that a lot. And even like in Kingsville, I come in and there are certain points, you have visual checkpoints. And one was when this was to the kind of southwest, you come to this point, you have to pull hard, right? And it's like that. So you're down at like 1,500 feet and you're just yanking. And there was a farmer out there, and he'd call, and I took his call so many times. He's like, you guys are dumping fuel. Sir, we can't dump fuel. I saw it. I'm like, what you're seeing are wing vapors. Okay. Coming off the wings. It's humid down here. And so we're racking. He called 3 times a week, every damn week, just to, harass us. And he was calling the FAA, and it's just one of those things you have to deal with sometimes.
Yeah.
So in my mishap, it was like, hey, you have to practice these things. So I sat through the FNAB, and not my fault, but I am responsible because I signed for the aircraft, right? So, I mean, that's what it was, and, go back to flying. So, but what happens now is at the end of the services, you have 2 options. You can keep your mouth shut and fly again, or you can shut the fuck up, right? I'm sorry. Yeah, that's it. That is keeping it. Or you can say that, you're having issues and never fly again, So I kept my mouth shut. I had nightmares for 6 months straight every night. I'd be driving my car and I'd take a sharp corner and it would just flash like I'm spinning out of control. And unfortunately, it's going to last to 2021. I have nightmares, and it subsided to where I was having maybe 6 a month, and it was always like a plane crashing and bodies going anywhere, or it was me crashing and dying. It was brutal. It's nonstop. The therapist in Orange County made it go away. We did, I think it's called HDMR, maybe. I'm not sure, but the idea was to get negative thoughts. Like if, you're an infantry guy and, and the stuff you saw is to kind of, let's say your friend, is fatally injured next to you and that haunts you. The idea is to take that thought and remove it, and I haven't had a plane, not one since. It went from that to nothing. And that helped me a lot at that point, though I was still messed up because we didn't focus on other things at the time. And so the next set of trauma, and of course I went back to flying, and what I wanted to do was just keep flying. I didn't care about making rank. I just wanted to fly airplanes to get out of my system. I had the trauma as a kid. Now I have this trauma. I think it was tough at first, especially going from I was a T-34 instructor, which was the primary turboprop trainer. Now it's a T6 section 2. And I was I volunteered to be the OCF guy, and I did aerobatics and spins. And so I would fly a certain phase mainly, and that helped a bit. And then I went to Korea, and then I wanted to go back and fly jets out of Kingsville. And I got that because I volunteered to go to Korea. Actually, I was voluntold to do an IA in Iraq. I forget what it's called. It was like EWO, I think. He lets you out a warfare officer to stop IEDs and stuff. And I told them, I said, if you go, and the command was like, hey, or not my command, but we had Dupers said, if you go there, you have whatever you want. I said, I want Kingsville. And they said, you got it. Well, I was OIC of in Net South of the Saudis at the time. And I had to be pretty disciplined with them because you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. The Saudis were some of the hardest folks to train. Most of them weren't very good. Some were, those, it's funny, those that were good didn't come from rich families. They grew up in small villages and they worked hard, right? And those that grew up in money, guess what they didn't do? They didn't work hard. And it just, some princes, but they all went to their Naval Academy. And, the thing is, so they said, hey, we need 15 pilots this year. How many want to be pilots out of so they would give a physical and 100 dudes would pass the physical. And they say, okay, how many want to be pilots? And no kidding, 2 guys would go, I do. And they're like, okay, but you other dudes, next 20, you're going to be pilots. So you can imagine you never wanted to fly and you're forced to fly.
Shit.
It doesn't work out well most of the time.
No.
But then flying T-45s, it got better, I had some issues, and I started to see some effects at the time. I started to have really, for example, in tail chase, the T-45 was very susceptible to vortices stuff from a T-45. I took off behind 747s for it, and it was just like a rock. But they say whatever reason, it caused you to, flip. And one time, the plane, it just went up, flip, and straight nose down. All right. Out of control. Now I have controls and what we call neutral idle. You neutralize controls and go to idle, and then get it and fly it out. And just things like that happened. I was starting to get pain in my chest, right? And then in the last 3 years, what the doctor saw too were your blood pressure keeps going up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And they're like, you have hypertension. I'm like, okay. So then, I get out. I do. Afghanistan. And what's going to happen there, my combat, like I told you earlier, was very mild, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is I had trauma as a kid. I had that trauma, and now I've got more. And I think if you take any one of those out, so I had, 2 sets, I think I'd be fine, right? But it's going to get worse. We get shot at sometimes. The only reason is because the baller would drop. So there's a ball in the bottom, right? Would drop down, and I remember this flight, and you could, see all the sprinkles from AKs outside the, our lights are out, we're climbing, they're not going to come close to hitting us, sort of thing. No big deal, really. I was in probably over 50 IDF attacks, and most were far, but I had 2 that were one early on. I was in the aircraft and exploded near us, hit the runway at night, and the aircraft shook. We heard debris or something hitting us, so we had to shut down and look at everything. It was like dirt and rocks from where it hit, and it hit maybe 100 feet away. Yeah. Right. And so we got that. And then the worst one though was, this was in July 14, I think. So I was walking out to go to the bathroom because we were in these barracks, right? And the head was outside. Head is, for you guys, that's a Navy term. Because by the way, head, it comes from back in the British Navy days. They would go to the head of the ship to go to the bathroom. And so that's why it became head. I'm not sure why someone would go to the front of the ship and take a dump. You should do it in the back. Where
sure.
Next thing you're eating and there's like poop coming down all the way down. No thanks. And I'm in flip-flops, underwear, and a t-shirt, and I hear two, and I should have known, incoming, and next thing you know, we had one of those 6-barrel Gatling guns types, I think Navy calls the Vulcan, and it goes off. And if you've been near one, which I'm sure you have, and it goes off, you know how loud that is, right?
They're fucking
no hearing protection, and the rounds explode, and at altitude, and all of a sudden there's a big boom, and apparently it hit it, and thing exploded. It actually, so when that thing went off, like I'm kind of holding on, and then this, it knocked my soul into Pakistan. I'm a pilot, I'm not a soldier, Marine, SF. And then it had shrapnel from both. I'm not sure from that or from the shells exploding, but they hit me and they burnt my whole. I had burn marks all over my arm.
Really.
And yeah, and so it that pretty much shocked me. I was like, man, that was loud. And I never. In October of 15, we were. I think it was October 15. Bad guys had launched a series of IDF attacks during the day, and ended up being like 15 or 16. In like 15 minutes. They sent the gunship out. And I'd never seen a gunship work till then. That was pretty impressive, right? I'm like, okay, go Air Force. That's the first and last time I ever said go Air Force. Just FYI. I can't give those guys too much credit.
Yeah.
And we were in one of those concrete bunkers. And so we go inside, and you can hear them, boom, 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 And my buddy looks a little scared. It's his first one, and he's like, "You don't look very scared." And I'm like, "Have you ever been in a plane crash?" That for me was the scariest moment, because the noise it made, and it just tore that plane up, man. And again, I just went some IDF stuff. Really bad weather in Afghanistan. We didn't have like out here where center, our approach will say, "Hey, you've got, medium to intense rain 12 miles ahead," and that means probably thunderstorm. Our radars would go down all the time. And I remember flying into pure ice, man. We iced up so fast, we're getting knocked around. It said clear, showed green, but of course the radar's not working,
Yeah.
And you're just, you come out that day and the aircraft's just up and down, and our headsets are coming off, and I'm like, fuck, trying to control it. I take it off autopilot, I fly it, and I've been in the right seat when the guys did the same, and it just things like that. But I started getting pain in my chest a lot, right? In between, so that was 60 on, 60 off. In between, I ended up getting addicted because I had back pain. I'm not going to blame the doctor. He ended up losing his license to give narcotics because he was in with this insurance company, and he was just giving everyone hydrocodone. Like, "Doc, my earlobe hurts." You're like, "Oh, here's hydrocodone."
Jeez.
I think I'm frozen. Are you frozen?
You are a little bit.
Yeah, I'm on my screen. I'm completely frozen. So, you want me to keep going, or?
It's freezing pretty bad. Try to fix it real quick. What's going on here? Well, I don't know if he can hear me. We'll see what happens. Sorry about that, people. It's technology. Stuff happens. Definitely try to edit it, get it fixed. Well,